Hello everybody and welcome to another video, and this is the final day of my birthday marathon, where all week we've been looking back at the heavy metal music from the early 90s, 1991 to 1993, that sort of informed and shaped my taste in heavy metal music. Now, most of these have been music videos that came from a TV show called Headbangers Ball. My older brother used to record this show on a Sunday night, and then throughout the week before we went to school, we'd sit and we'd watch these heavy metal music videos for about an hour or so before we went to school. So, you know, that's where my sort of taste in heavy metal music started to form, and, you know, all the different songs that I heard sort of made me go, I like this. Now, the band we're looking at today, I have kind of looked at on this channel before, but not quite. We're looking at a band called Nocturnus. Now, about 2 years ago, I checked out a band called Nocturnus AD. Now, what happened here is Nocturnus, back in like the early 90s, they released a few albums, and then they sort of disappeared, disbanded, whatever. And then several years later, they reformed as Nocturnus AD. So I have kind of checked this band out before. Now, I really liked Nocturnus. This is the only song in this marathon of music that we're looking at. This is the only one that I didn't hear through Headbangers Ball. My older brother went out and he bought this album. I don't know whether it was just on a whim or whether he'd heard a track from one of his friends or something like that. But he bought this album home and put it on, and I immediately really liked it because it was very different. You know, obviously it had the sort of death metal sound to it, but Nocturnus did what I refer to as future metal. All of their songs tell a story, but it's set like in the far future. And this sort of caught me for multiple reasons. One, because it was very different. It was unlike anything I'd heard before. But also because at the time I was really into Warhammer 40k. Well, who are we kidding? I still like Warhammer 40k, but, you know, I was really into it back then. And, you know, the front cover of their album sort of evoked that sort of similar sort of thing. Like one of their albums called The Key had what appeared to be a space marine on the front cover of the album. So, you know, that sort of caught me as well. So the mixture of the very different style of music and, you know, the themes and the stories behind it, and the fact that it was sort of loosely associated with something I was really into at the time, it really caught me. Now we're going to look at a track called Climate Controller, which was, I believe that's the first track that I actually heard by them. If I remember correctly, it's the first track off the Thresholds album. Don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've listened to the album. Now I like this because, I mean, the way that the song starts is pretty cool, and then it goes into the sort of heavy music. I just really like the piece of music. This is the only this is the only song we're going to look at that doesn't actually have a video associated with it. We're only going to have static artwork to look at, but it's the music that we're looking at. So let's jump into this track and have a look at Climate Controller by Nocturnus. Let's go for it.
I do, master the earth and sky, Kakadamu, I call to thee, hearken remember, bring forth the mighty storm, that this world shall taste your fury. Lord Gibble, keeper of the fire and forge, while I'm your Tara, I call to thee, hearken remember, while the swords appear in the sky, that all shall feel your might. Commander of the Demarantia, master of order, Wanatuku, I call to thee, hearken remember, deliver the legions of wicked ones onto this world that they may seek revenge. Si Dinga Anakapa. Si Dinga Kia Kappa. I summon thee, creatures of darkness, by the works of darkness.
Yes. There you go. Climate Controller by Nocturnus. Now, like I said, I absolutely loved this track when I was younger. You know, I was addicted to this band. I was addicted to this album. I listened to it so much. And like I said, it had this very had that sort of futuristic feel about it. I mean, in later songs, they actually had sounds of like laser guns firing and all that sort of thing. And, you know, it's something that really caught my imagination because, you know, like at the time, all other death metal and heavy metal was pretty much of a much as, you know, all about the same sort of thing. But this was set in like the future. This was futuristic and it was telling a big sort of sweeping story, apparently. You know, and I don't know, it was just something different. And the music as well, you know, it had quite a different sound to it. You know, obviously it had your staple death metal elements in it, but it had things like keyboards and, you know, weird sounds and stuff like that. So, you know, that really sort of grabbed me as well. And I absolutely loved it. Now, obviously, the song is called Climate Controller, and it seems to be talking about, like, this futuristic army or whatever taking control of the weather system of a planet in order to defeat the armies of said planet, you know, manipulating the weather and creating storms and stuff like that, and, you know, causing earthquakes and volcanoes and stuff like that to, you know, destroy the planet, essentially. That's what the story seems to be talking about. Now, the song opens with that sort of chant / prayer sort of thing, and I used to know that word for word. I still know most of it off by heart, but, you know, it's been a long time. And the funny thing is, I actually used it once when a friend of mine approached me. They needed to do a media studies piece for school, and they wanted to do like this short film about someone getting possessed by demons and going on a murder spree. And they approached me and said, I need to do this short film. Would you mind playing the serial killer? I think you'd be really good at it. I wasn't quite sure how to take that, but I went along with it anyway. And we sort of created this script and story and whatnot. And I used that opening chant from this song as the sort of chant in their media studies video. Because, you know, we needed some sort of chant and it needed to sound good and convincing and that sort of thing. So I used that for their media studies program, you know. And I believe they did quite well. But anyway, the actual thing opens. Lord Adu, master of the earth and sky, Cockadamu, I call to thee, hearken and remember, bring forth the mighty storm that this world shall taste your fury. Lord Gibble, keeper of the fire and forge, Balagintara, I call to thee, hearken and remember, make the swords appear in the sky that all shall feel your might. Commander Lagumel Demorankia, master of order, Banataku, I call to thee, hearken and remember, deliver the legions of wind demons unto this world, that they may seek revenge. Z Dinger Anakapai, Z Dinger Kiakapai, I summon thee, creatures of darkness, by the works of darkness. Sounds pretty good as a sort of chant for demon summoning, doesn't it? You know, I thought that sounded really cool. But, you know, this is possibly like the army that's manipulating the climate of said planet. You know, they're calling upon their many gods to give them the strength to do this, possibly. Anyway, it opens. Storms manufactured to destroy. Fire striking down from the sky. Wind sweeping all rocks and trees aside. Lava emerging out of volcanoes. Quakes shake the earth to a split. Death from the clouds. Armies marching into their doom. Spirits plundering their very soul. Ions displaced from deep inside. Weapons of the gods. So, you know, they're talking about all these different sort of natural disasters and sort of weather things like storms that are manufactured to destroy, like tsunamis and typhoons and stuff like that. Fire raining down from the sky, you know, strong winds blowing everything away, you know, destroying all its path, lava spewing out of volcanoes, you know, quakes splitting the earth. You know, it says death from the clouds. And then it goes on like armies marching into the doom. So like the people that they're fighting against, the planet that they're trying to destroy, you know, these armies are having to go through all these natural disasters to try and fight this army that's controlling their weather system, as it were. And it even says there, weapons of the gods. You know, natural disasters essentially are weapons of the gods. Anyway, it carries on. Fusion of the ancient ways with modern tech support, bringing atmospheric change, master of climate control. Climate? Why do I keep saying climate? Climate. Chanting to the angry gods, seeding clouds with ice, causing shifts in ether planes, master of climate control. So fusion of the ancient ways with modern tech support. So, you know, trying to control the weather is something that has been like in ancient civilizations for years, like the Mayans, Egyptians, things like that, you know, praying to their gods for altering of weather, you know, praying for bountiful harvest, you know, good weather so that their crops can thrive and stuff like that. It's not a new thing. So it's like fusion of the ancient ways, you know, doing that, but with modern tech support. So like maybe they're using like specialist pieces of technology to manipulate the climate of this planet. So it's these two things, you know, the ancient and the futuristic coming together to, and it says they're bringing atmospheric change, master of climate control, chanting to the angry gods, you know, like what the Mayans and Egyptians and whatnot would probably do to, you know, try and control the weather. Seeding clouds with ice, which is probably something that they've been doing with their technology, and causing shifts in ether planes. Yeah. Incantation finished as the armies start to charge. Suddenly their air begins to take on many shapes. Demons of the Legion swarm to take revenge. Sheets of blindness tossing every human fool aside. So incantation finished, you know, we've done our prayer to our gods. Now we can, you know, charge into battle. Suddenly the air begins to take on many shapes, you know, so after they've done their incantations and what have you, you know, the air starts to feel thick and heavy, maybe like feeling very charged, you know, like that weird sort of static energy you feel just before a storm, that sort of thing. The demons of the Legion swarm to take revenge. And sheets of blindness tossing every human fool aside. I can only imagine that's things like massive bursts of lightning and thunder, you know, striking the ground and tossing, you know, soldiers and whatnot through the air. Nothing left to count, no bodies, blood-stained earth and stone lie scattered. So this, you know, those sheets of blindness, I'm assuming it's referring to lightning, you know, nothing left to count, no bodies. So this thing is like striking these soldiers, these people, and it's completely obliterating, you know, vaporizing them. There's no bodies, you know, to be found, just a big old crater in the ground where somebody used to be, you know, blood-stained earth and stone lie scattered, you know, so there's the blood there from where the human has essentially gone, and, you know, the ground's been like broken up where it's struck. Then it carries on. Fusion of the ancient ways with modern tech support. Bring atmospheric change, master of climate control. Chanting to the angry gods, seeding clouds with ice, causing shifts in ether planes, master of climate control. Aftermath of Horror sends a message to the globe. Danger to the Empire will result in hells untold, ripping both the flesh and soul of anyone who tries to take with force the realm of the one who rules the skies. So the aftermath of the horror sends a message to the rest of the world. So, you know, what's happened here on this battlefield, you know, the rest of the world's going to hear about it and they're going to go, oh, you know what? Maybe not. You know, danger to the Empire will result in hells untold. It's like, if you continue to come at us, we're gonna do this to all of you. You know, we're gonna completely obliterate you. You know, ripping flesh and soul from anyone who tries to oppose us, anyone who's like tries to come back at us and tries to defeat us. We're just gonna rip you apart. You know, anyone who tries to take force the realm of the one who rules the skies, you know, and in the artwork we saw that big sort of ship, you know, so maybe that's the climate controller, as it were. And then it goes back, nothing left to count, no bodies, blood-stained earth, and stone lie scattered. Then it goes back to the beginning of the song, storms manufactured to destroy, fire striking down from the sky, wind sweeping all rocks and trees aside, lava emerging out of volcanoes, quakes, shake the earth to a split, death from the clouds, armies marching into their doom, spirits plundering their very souls, ions displaced from deep inside, weapons of the gods. Keeping enemy troops in sight high above the fight, armies destroyed, watching with delight, waiting patiently for an eye to subdue the sky, counting the dead as they lie in waste. climate controller, the weather dominator, and then it repeats that climate controller, the weather dominator several times before, you know, some really cool solos, and then the song just suddenly ends. Now, like I said, this, or every song on the album tells a story. I can't be sure if it tells an overarching story, because it's been a while since I listened to it. But every single track has a specific story to it. And I liked that, you know, because, you know, at the time, songs were either like heavily political, or, you know, they were talking about like God of Emptiness, you know, they were talking about gods and how God betrays people and stuff like that. This was a completely fantasy story. And, you know, and at the time I hadn't heard of bands like Blind Guardian, or I don't think I'd even heard of Manowar at the time, where they had those sort of high fantasy, you know, sort of warriors, dwarves, elves, barbarians sort of stories. But this, you know, is telling futuristic stories. It was telling stories within the songs. The music sounded really cool and really different. And, you know, it really captured my imagination. You know, like I said, I was about 11, 12, maybe 13 at the time when I first heard this. And it just immediately grabbed me because, obviously, my enjoyment of the Warhammer 40,000. So, yeah. I really enjoyed it. I mean, this was the first album of theirs I heard. It took me forever to get hold of a copy of The Key, which was the first album. It took me forever to find a copy of that. It was so hard to find because this band seemed to be one of those really obscure bands. You know, you say to a metal fan, you know, have you heard of Nocturnus? And they'd be like, who? And I'd be like, oh, okay. Why doesn't more people know about this? Because they were a fantastic band. You know, and I just love their music. I mean, even the last album of theirs, I can't even remember when it was out. I do have it. But, you know, they still sort of kept that similar sort of futuristic sound and the whole futuristic element of the, you know, of the music, you know, of their unique selling point, as it were. I mean, that's why they called, you know, the renewed version Nocturnus AD. Yeah, I just really loved this band. I've always really enjoyed their music. But that was one that really had an impact on my taste in music because, you know, it was something new, it was something different, it was something strange, and I don't think I've encountered another band like it. I don't think there's another metal band that I know of that plays that kind of music, you know, that whole sort of futuristic fantasy metal. You know, I can't think of another band that does it. So, you know, they've always been a band that really stuck with me. But I don't know what else I can say about that, so we'll leave that as it is. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is the final day of my birthday marathon, where I've been looking at songs from the early 90s that shaped and formed my taste in music. We've got one more track coming after this, and that will be the end of the birthday marathon. And I'm hoping people have enjoyed it, you know, this interesting sort of look back at, first of all, older songs and, you know, giving you the idea of the sort of music that formed my taste. So, yeah. What more can I say? If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, maybe even subscribe if you aren't already, because that would help me out immensely. And, yeah, thank you all very, very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.